If you're like me and you've ever wondered how the heck do I start Wisconsin, well, you've come to the right place, because we're going to go through it step by step. Welcome to the Wisconsin Road Trip, everybody, a comprehensive series on how to do everything in this region from start to finish. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a video. And if you're an OG, drop me a W in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. We'll start off with the International Roadstar 1700, and we're going to discover the west side of the map. Let's get started, everybody. Just like in previous regions, we're going to scan the radar trailer right outside of the garage and see if there's any upgrades or tasks in the immediate area. And there is one upgrade and a task close by that we can get started on right away. We'll sell this radar trailer back. I'm not going to bring it around with me. And then we'll head right out the back side of the garage parking lot, and we're going to run up the hill following this river edge, and that should take us right to that first upgrade. This upgrade is the engageable diff lock for the Boar that we purchased on the season finale of the Yukon Adventure. If you remember, we used it to haul the Cat 770G up to the old mines, and now that truck will be a little more capable for us, and there's a raised suspension upgrade that we can find in the second map as well. Let's head further up this river and we'll head up to that other task that we found. Wisconsin is a lot like Taymyr in the sense that there's all kinds of stuff here that can damage your suspension, so it actually will pay off quite a bit to take your time and drive slow through these backwoods areas. Okay, this first task is the Exploration Gone Wrong task. We'll need to rescue a Scout 800 that's been rolled off the cliff just down the back side of this house. There's a couple ways you can get there. I personally like to just drive right out the backyard and go over the hill to get to it. And this task is actually kind of difficult because of where the Scout is located. You can drive all the way down to the bottom and pull it down the hill, but then you're going to have a little bit more of a difficult time dragging it back up to the house. And for that reason, I like to try to pull it back up the hill so it's a closer drop off. But these rocks are kind of slippery, and when you put the brake on, your truck just kind of slides forward, so be careful when you're working around this area here. You have to stay real far to the right to get it up the hill. It gets hung up on the cliff, but if you can keep pulling it to the right, it'll get up a little bit easier. So we'll yank it up the hill backwards, and that actually went a lot smoother than I was expecting. I've had a lot of trouble trying to accomplish this task before, just getting it up there. Then I'll get turned around and we're going to pull it back up over these rocks. This too might give you some trouble. So just get it up as far as you can and then probably just drop it, get your truck up over the rocks and then hook up to it again. We don't need to repair or refuel the Scout, we just need to drop it off. Wisconsin is also the region where the devs introduced all of these bushes to winch to, and they just break right away, so using your quick winch option isn't always the best choice here. I think the devs just realized that players were using the ninja winch to save themselves, and they wanted to troll us a little bit. But we can get it up over those rocks. Just kind of pull your winch in a little bit closer each time you drive forward. And then once we get it up over the hump, we can just drive it right into the backyard. So that route isn't necessarily easier, but it's a little bit shorter. I'm going to make sure to take the fuel out of it. There's not a whole lot in there, but enough to get us almost topped off again before we continue on. Then we'll drop it off. And now we have the first task done. From here, we're going to head further west to that first Watchtower. We'll just take the cross-country route to get there. It's going to make it a little easier for us in the end, but it is kind of tipsy, so you'll have to watch out for that as well. Wisconsin is the first region that they introduced logging into this game. and they also retrofitted the previous maps with logging contracts. I wasn't playing back then. I started my journey when Dawn was the current region in Season 5, but I've heard other people talk about it. So just up ahead here is the logging station, and this is the only logging station on the map that has infinite medium and long logs. So this will be the place where we have to go when the other logging stations run out of materials. Continuing on, we got to cross this deep ditch here. It's not too bad in a Scout. It gets a little tipsy with the bigger trucks, but we should be fine with this one. And just past that ravine is that first Watchtower. We'll swing in here to the left and discover it. There's a lot of really big rocks here too, and they will destroy your truck, so take it easy over them. Okay, there's our first look of the map, and it's raining pretty hard, but you can still see it's a beautiful area. Let's get turned around. There's another new task that we've discovered that's pretty close to us. We'll open up the map and make a mark on it. It's the 2 New Horizons task, just up the hill. From there, we'll have to go to the drop-off, and then we'll activate Repaying the Debts, Lost But Not Forgotten, and then Creek Bridge. Let's head back up the hill, and we'll go do this task right away. The International Lodestar used to be the OG Scout in the game. Back in the day, this was the best thing you could get. It's still a pretty capable vehicle. The advantages that it has are it uses a truck gearbox and a truck engine, and it has the Scout hitch. So like in the last region when we got the Ford F750, which is a very capable Scout, but it doesn't allow you to connect to any of the Scout trailers. This truck is the one you would use if you want to pull around like the radar trailer or some of the Scout flatbeds to haul cargo, and it's very capable. Okay, we made it up here. We'll get this one active, and just around the corner, there's a Scout flatbed with 2 vehicle spare parts loaded onto it. We need to haul over to Mr. B's house. Now pulling up to it, you can see that there's a tree spawned right through the middle of the trailer, and when you get close to it, the trailer will sometimes flip sideways and dump the cargo on the ground. If that happens, you'll have to restart the task, and it'll put it back up there. Just make sure you are prepared to attach to it immediately when you get close to it. That'll help to keep it from flipping over. And then leaving here, you kind of have to be careful that you don't tip the trailer over going over these rocks. So I try to keep my right wheels kind of up on top of them. It helps to flatten out the load so it doesn't get too far sideways and come unpacked. But if that happens, once again, just run up to the top and restart the task, and it'll load everything up again. Let's head down the hill, back over towards that Watchtower, and we're going to take a right and follow the hillside. It's not really too bad. The Lodestar does a pretty good job pulling this trailer. It's not an issue. You just got to be careful that you don't tip it over, and everything will be fine. The hill does lean a little bit to the left going through here. Just try to keep your momentum up, as I always say. Momentum is definitely your best friend in this game. And we'll go through that intersection and continue on forwards. We made it back out to the paved road. We're going to have to hang a left here and go down a little ways, and then we can exit this road to the right. There's another back trail over here. You can see the drop-off point is not too far away from here. Now you definitely want to make sure you take it easy over this stuff. Since we've gotten it this far, we don't want to drop this cargo right at the end and have to start it over. But if you continue down the road a little ways, we'll be able to turn off to the right and go up through the rocks. And there's a house on top up here. So the first step of this task is to deliver the cargo and the trailer, and once we get that complete, there will be a stage 2 where we need to repair and refuel this little loaf that's sitting here. Thankfully, the loaf has some fuel on the roof that we could use, and repair points, oddly enough, but we can't use those. We don't have enough repair points in our truck to fix it all the way, so we're just going to bring it with us until we can get access to a trailer store, and we'll use a Scout repair trailer to fix it. But we can use the fuel. So we'll head down the hill, and then we're going to continue to the right, the way that we were going originally, and down at the bottom, there's another task that we can activate. Let's head down there now. I'm pulling the loaf with the engine turned off, just so it doesn't accidentally lock itself up. But if it starts creeping up on you and it looks like it's going to hit you, you can either drop the winch or start the engine and the brakes will apply. I don't think we'll need to do either though. One cool thing about this region is all of the vehicles that you have to rescue for different tasks, most of them have all-terrain tires and are kind of decked out with off-road add-ons. Which is unique because in previous regions, everything was just the stock configuration. So that's kind of a cool thing. Just up ahead here, there's a task where we need to haul this medium logging trailer and a load of logs to a house that's over by the garage. We're not going to do it right now, obviously, but we can get it activated. Repaying the debts. Then we'll continue on, and up here to the right is a railway warehouse that we can go through. To the left there, you can see that there's water over the road, and I would highly recommend not ever taking that route for any reason. It is extremely muddy and there aren't any winch points through there that can help you. Most likely you'll get stuck. There are some bigger trucks that go through there with mud tires, but even them, it's really slow moving and there's always a chance that you're going to get stuck. So just avoid it. We can go through this railway station instead, and then we'll go up and around the hillside. There's nothing here that we need to activate, so we'll just pass through and follow the tracks, just like we did in Yukon. We'll hang a left here, follow this road back up and over the hilltop, and there's going to be a couple more tasks up here that we can activate. Now going through this intersection, if you were to take a right here, there's a really cool bridge that you can cross. I don't really ever have much of a reason to go across it, but it is pretty neat if you want to explore through that area and check it out. And coming down the other side, you can see that task is right up ahead. So what we're going to do is drop the loaf here. We'll get this task activated and we'll work on it right away. This is the lost but not forgotten task. We need to deliver this Hummer H2 over to Mr. Johnson's house. The Hummer is tipped over in the river, and the river has a pretty solid current, so it's difficult to go upstream to get close to it. I like to drive along the shoreline here on the rocks, but the rocks are also pretty slippery and you'll end up sliding off to the left there if you're not too careful. So try to kind of keep your tires as close to the right as possible, but even from the edge of it here, we can't really reach the Hummer. So I'm going to intentionally drive off and kind of lunge myself into the river and grab onto it. This river is also full of really big boulders, so these smaller trucks have a hard time driving around through it. If you try to do this with one of the bigger trucks, it's a lot easier. But it is definitely doable with a Scout. You just kind of have to do it the right way. Once we get it tipped over and start pulling it back out, the current will actually help push us along. You shouldn't need to turn the Hummer on. It is damaged, although it will still drive itself, and it does have all-terrain tires. But it seems like it pulls a little easier if you just leave the engine off. There might be a few spots where you need to let go of the Hummer and get your truck further on, and then just hook back up to it and pull it out. I'm trying to stay close to the shoreline so I don't get too far out there on those really big boulders. I don't want to get stuck out there. Once you get it back here a little ways, you can just drop it and get your Lodestar out of the river. then we'll hook up to it again. The Hummer's getting flooded out there. You can grab onto the trees to help you get out, and even the bushes. Some of the bushes will break and pull towards you, but sometimes they don't, so it's alright to at least try to grab onto them. And if you're having a hard time, just reposition yourself. Sometimes that's all it takes to get out. Let's yank it up here on the top, up by the loaf. We're going to use the fuel in the loaf to refill it. Since we have to refuel the loaf later on, we don't really have a need to keep any of it in there. Now we can leave it here and we'll come back and get it later. Let's just worry about getting this Hummer delivered first. So we'll head further down the shoreline, and the bridge is out, so we're going to have to cross upstream here a little ways. If you follow the road through, there's some pretty big boulders in there, so I try to go to the left, and it makes it a little easier to get through. Although the riverbed is very muddy, and each time you pass through it, it gets worse, just like in Yukon. We made it through though, and we'll continue on and get this creek bridge task activated. We can pull further up. Let's get this Hummer delivered up here. There it is, and one of the rewards is that we get to keep the Hummer. It's ours now. So if you're playing hard mode, this is actually a good task to get done right away, because it'll give you access to another scout in the region that you won't have to pay to deploy. And even though it's not fully upgraded, it's upgraded enough to be able to use it for a lot of this stuff. I'm just going to drop it up here by the intersection, and I'm going to make sure that it has a full tank of fuel, just in case we need to use that fuel later on in one of the bigger trucks. We'll have a reserve sitting here for it. We'll continue up the road, and the factory's bridge is right here. Let's activate it. Now we can turn around and we'll track the 2 New Horizons task again. We're going to pull that loaf back up to the garage. I don't see any need to go further south down the map. The road is pretty muddy, and the tasks that are down there we can activate from the other end. So let's head back up to the loaf. We're just going to backtrack the same way we came here. I do try to drive around all of the water puddles, if possible, because they'll slow you down quite a bit. But driving in the grass in this map, there's a lot of bushes that'll destroy your suspension, so just be aware of that. Now crossing the river, the current is pushing against us this time, so it's a little bit more challenging, but if you stay to the right, once again, it's not too bad, and you can grab onto these trees and help yourself out. The trees are breakable, but the Scout is pretty light. If you just tap your winch button, most of the time it'll help you out of there. There's the loaf. Let's get turned around, and we're going to pull it back over by the garage. There we go. Wisconsin is a 2-map region, and the first map seems to have the deeper muddy areas and a lot of river crossings, although there are some river crossings on the second one as well. But the mud here can be quite ridiculous. It is a pretty beautiful region though, and I do enjoy it. Some of the logging contracts are a little crazy as well. It's not that you have to haul so many loads, but the contracts themselves require a lot of wooden planks to be delivered with them. So you'll be taking multiple trips to the same areas, just with different cargo, which is kind of cool. I like it that way. It breaks up the monotony of just doing 3 or 4 loads of long logs to the same house. When they added logging to the game, I'm pretty sure that's the same time that they also added the extra contracts to Michigan, which would be the Cement for the Region and Super Order contracts. So like I said, I wasn't playing back then, but it would have been kind of interesting to see that happen. Wait, what's going on here? The loaf is showing off. Come on, buddy. Quit acting up. Alright, we're back to the pavement. The garage is just up ahead. You gotta watch out for these rocks on the pavement. They'll blow out your truck just like they do in Tamir. So just be aware of that. Okay, there's the garage. We're gonna pull the loaf in there and get it repaired and refueled at the trailer store. If you're playing hard mode, you won't be able to do this, so you're gonna have to use your own trucks with add-ons to accomplish this. You can also use the service body add-on for the Lodestar, but I believe it only holds 500 repair points, which would be enough to accomplish this. But I personally don't really like that add-on because it seems like it gets hung up on stuff when you're trying to do off-roading with it. So I'm just going to do it this way, and we'll purchase a trailer. The smaller service trailer should have enough repair points to do this. And then we'll top it off with fuel. And now that task is complete. Let's sell this trailer back, and then I'm just gonna run through the garage, get repaired and refueled, and we'll head back out. This time we're gonna discover the east side of the map. Just like before, we're gonna leave the back of the garage parking lot, only this time, instead of heading up the river, we're gonna just cross it right here at the bottom. There's some back roads up here that'll take us around the edge of the map, and it's quite a bit easier than trying to drive down the road. There's a really nasty muddy spot just outside of the garage that I don't really want to drive through with this thing. So we'll go through the trees. There's actually a couple roads up here. We're going to go past the first one and get up to the second one. And then there's a wooden bridge that we can use to cross the river. So we can hang a right on this road and we'll head up across this bridge. There's some brick framing out here that we can drive past and discover. We'll just follow this road all the way up to the northeast corner of the map. Up ahead here you can see there's some brick framing that we can utilize later on to deconstruct and get cargo from. There's not quite as many cargo areas out in the wild as there was in Yukon. They kind of toned it down a little bit, but there are definitely still some out here. We'll probably use most of them up in this map. The big contracts in this region are going to be the ones that require us to rebuild the paper factory, and I know there's one contract that requires a lot of bricks, so if we utilize the ones that are around the map, we won't have to craft as many. Wisconsin also introduces the generator trailers for the first time, and we'll be using those to power the crafting areas. Just like in Yukon, the crafting areas are also storage zones, so they have a dual purpose. We probably won't go to quite the extent of stocking the storage zones that we did in the last region, but we will do a little bit of it. Okay, here's the look before you leap task. We can get this one activated. We'll need to pull a Chevy Kodiak up the hill here that's been stuck out in the swamp at the bottom. But we can continue on down this road. We're going to head down the east side of the map, going south. This trail through here is pretty cool actually. It's got a lot of cool scenery. I wouldn't try to take a bigger truck down here because you can see up ahead there's a really narrow passageway through these rocks. I don't think you'll be able to get through here with a bigger truck. We almost can barely fit through there with this thing, but it did fit. So we'll continue on. Further up this road, we're going to find an upgrade for the International Paystar 5600 Twin Steer, which is another truck that we'll be getting in this region. It's located in the second map, so we won't find it until later on, but we get it for free just by discovering it. And it's a pretty good one, in my opinion. Following this road, there isn't really too much of a risk of getting lost. It doesn't have really any turnoffs to the left that we need to worry about, as we're pretty close to the edge of the map. So just follow it down until you start seeing signs of civilization again. As you can see, there is some wood framing up here. We can drive past that so it shows up on the map, and there's another task just beyond it. Down the hill to my right is where that church is located in the little town that's flooded out. Let's get this task activated. This is the aftermath of the hurricane. As you can see, some of these tasks have the same names as they did in previous regions. This was a task in Kola Peninsula in the Amandra map. But for this one, we need to load up some cargo that's been spawned out on the map and haul it back up here. Then from here, we're going to head further south and we'll go get that next watchtower. There is an upgrade along the way that we'll have to get. We could go straight to the Watchtower and it would reveal that upgrade, but then we'd have to backtrack to get it. So we're going to stay to the left and follow this road up the hill, and we'll go get that first. The trail heading up this way is kind of a muddy one for a little ways, but then it gets back up to solid ground. This map has a lot of trees, and there will be some times where we drive through them to take shortcuts, but for the most part, the trees are not your friend, as it can look like there's an easy way to get through, and then you'll get tangled up out there. You can see to the left there is one of the vehicle spare parts that spawned after we activated the last task, so we'll have to come back up here with a truck and a mini crane to pick that up. That task also has manual unloading, just like we experienced in Yukon, so make sure your truck has a mini crane. A little bit further here, off to the left, is that next upgrade. We will have to drive through the trees here to get to it. Now there is a road that goes up to the left, but it's really rocky, so I'm going to stay to the right, and then we'll cut up over the hilltop. Either way is fine to go, but this is just the path that I prefer. That upgrade should be somewhere close to my mark there. Just after this big rock, we can cut to the left and find a path through the trees. And when you get close to it, that upgrade will start blinking. There it is, off to the right. This one is a little bit easier to find with a scout because it's pretty much right in the trees, and it's kind of tough to drive through there with a bigger truck. So this is the raised suspension for the International Paystar 5600 twin steer. Now, leaving here, we're going to drive across the valley and go up the other side and get that Watchtower. So I do prefer to just drive down the hillside, cutting through the trees. It seems like it's the easiest way to get out of here. Although there are some pretty steep cliffs, so you do want to make sure you're paying attention to where you're going. You don't want to drive off of one of them. Just take it nice and slow. And make sure you know exactly where you're headed. This seems like a decent spot to go down. Now once you get out the bottom, you can cross this big valley, and then I was thinking I could just drive up the other side, but there's actually a pretty steep cliff here. So rather than trying to accomplish that, we're going to just follow the edge of this cliff down a little bit further. This probably wasn't the best place to come up the hill. I think if you drove further to the north, down in the valley, and then backtracked after getting up the hill, it would probably be a lot better. But instead I decided to try to do some acrobatics across the edge here by hanging onto the trees. And it got a little bit sketchy for a minute. I'm just swinging my way across. Okay, so if you backtracked a little further and came up over here, it would probably be a lot better route. So I'm going to attempt to drive up the hill here and see if I can make it through the trees. But once again, I'm pretty sure if I would have gone further to the north before trying to get up here, it would have been a lot easier. The trees can get pretty tight. As you can see, there isn't really a good path through here. There's a warehouse to the north that has fuel in it, and if you drive back to that point and then go up into the hills, you should have a lot easier time getting up here. Okay, if you can see that big tree to my left, that thing actually does not disappear, and if you try to drive over it, it has like a hitbox that you can get stuck on, so you have to go around it, and rather than doing that, I'm just going to try to drive through the trees, but I had some issues getting through there as well. Okay, we finally made it to the Watchtower. Let's get another view. There's the rolled steel factory up on top of that hill. We'll have to get that restored later on. Let's open up the map, and as you can see, we have some more stuff to activate. Just down the hill is the saving the farmer's machinery task. We'll do that, and then there's also a truck for us to discover, Pacific P512. So we should be able to just follow this road down the hill, and it'll come out right at the bottom where those things are located. You do have to be kind of careful going down this hill though. It's pretty easy to lose control. So I'm just going to use my brake on and off as I'm going down. just to keep me from going too fast. If you flip over up in here, it's going to be the end of your trip. There isn't really anything to winch to. The road zigzags down the hill. Just take each road that's going further to the bottom. And then once you reach the bottom, you should be able to just drive straight ahead through the swamp. It gets really muddy out here now, so you'll probably have to use low gear quite a bit. I'm going to try to stay close to these trees so I have something to winch myself with. And then there's an old farmstead out here that we can go past. Just keep an eye out for stumps. I managed to find one in the bushes here that I didn't see. There are some stumps located all around the map. And then when you're driving through the swamp, just try to stay to the shallower areas. So let's get this task activated. We'll need to pull that white western star across the map and get it delivered over to the farmer's other house. Now to get access to that truck that we need to rescue, I'm going to drive around the fence. If you drive out there in the field where that white western star is, it gets to be really deep mud. And this scout is definitely going to struggle in that spot. But if you head down further, you should be able to get up here to some higher ground by these hay bales. And as you can see, it's still really muddy here. Kind of reminds me of that swamp outside of the farm in Black River. You just got to make sure you're in low, because if you dig down too deep, you'll get high centered out here. And there is the Pacific P512. I actually really enjoy this truck. It does not have all-wheel drive, but it does have the same specialized wheels as the Pacific P16. It's just a smaller truck and quite a bit more maneuverable. We'll steal some fuel out of it because we're going to recover it from here. The truck is damaged pretty bad. And then we can continue on by heading back to the east, and we're going to meet up with the main road again. Once again, just make sure you use low gear heading through here. It is so muddy. I'm just going to break through the fence and head straight towards that electrical pole so I can winch to it. There we go. And then I'll just pull myself right out the other side. We do have some fuel reserves in the box of our Lodestar here that we can get fueled up again if we need to. I think it's 130 liters, so I'm not too worried about running out. Let's follow this road back up the hillside. There's a really sketchy river crossing up here that's leaning hard downhill. It shouldn't be too much of an issue with this thing, but when you come through here with any of the bigger trucks, especially if they're loaded, there's a high likelihood that you're going to roll down the hill and end up in the river. I know I have many times, but we'll go straight past it and we'll keep following this road further up. The gateway to the second map is just up ahead and around the corner. This is probably the more rugged area of this map, as it's kind of in the backwoods. There's a lot of rocks out here and some deeper mud. Let's just follow this road around, and then up here there's an intersection. If you go left, it'll take you over to the gateway, but if you go right, it takes you over to the brick crafting area. And there's another task over here that we can activate and accomplish right away. Just try to drive around these mud puddles. It'll save you a lot of time. You can see the quarry off to my left there. It's a pretty big quarry in this map, and the road going down into it is really long and winding, but I can show you an alternative route that makes it a lot easier to get in there. I try to drive right through the middle of this tree and power line pole instead of going through the mud. That also helps to make that spot quite a bit quicker. We got some more metal framing here off to the left, and straight up ahead is where we'll be able to craft all of the bricks that we need later on. On the other side of that parking lot is the next task that we're going to accomplish. Now this is the Decisions and Consequences task, and we'll need to rescue a Chevy that's been left out in the swamp that's just right across the road. The Chevy is upgraded, and it's kind of cool. It also has a roof rack with some fuel on it. We're going to steal that fuel out of it later on to help us get a little further in our exploration. So even though we don't have to travel very far to accomplish this task, we got to drive out in this swamp, and the mud is pretty deep and muddy, so you'll probably need to winch yourself through here to get close enough to that Chevy to hook up to it. And then driving back out, pulling the Chevy isn't really an option with this thing, so I'm just going to winch it over to me, and then I'll winch myself back out a little further, and then hook up to it again. It's kind of a pain in the butt how you have to do this, but if you have one of the bigger trucks over here, it might go a little easier. I think this thing's just bottoming out because it's not tall enough. But we can definitely accomplish this task using the Lodestar. It's just going to require some winching. I'm not going to turn the Chevy on because winching it out, it's going to try to drive forwards. So I'll just pull it out with the engine turned off. So just little by little, I'm winching myself out and pulling the Chevy up to me. Trying not to get too far away. Now that I'm closer to the edge, there isn't any really good winch points to use. But now that we've gotten out of there, we can just pull it out. So we did it. Just make sure you get the fuel out of it before you turn it in. It has 88 liters in it, so that should be able to fill us up almost all the way full again. Let's drop that off, and then we're going to follow this road up to the right, and we're going to head down into the quarry. There's another task down there where we need to rescue a Lodestar that's tipped over and pull it back out of there and deliver it up to the house up by that gateway. So we'll hang a left here. The quarry is just up ahead. There is a contest up here. If you like to do the contests, you might want to drive over that one. Now that we're heading down into the quarry, instead of following this long winding road all the way around, I'm going to take the first left here that goes down the hill. You can see the quarry incidents task is where we're headed to. It's on the second row down. So we'll take this left and utilize this shortcut to save us some time driving around. You can also drive straight and go right down into the bottom, but we don't have a need to go down there at the moment. So we'll follow the road to the right, and that Lodestar is just up ahead. This one is tipped over, so we'll need to flip it back up, and it does have off-road tires installed on it, so it can help itself out of here. The Lodestar does have quite a bit of fuel in it, so we can get topped off. And then we'll pull it back out of here. We need to take it up to the house near the quarry, which is actually up by the gateway. It does have some damage, so I'm not going to turn the engine on unless I absolutely need to, just so I don't have to run the risk of it popping into neutral. I don't want to use my repair points for any of these vehicles because it's not going to be enough, and we have a long trip ahead of us. I want to save them for myself. So we can drive back up that shortcut that we took. Shouldn't have any problem getting up here. If you do start to have a problem, you can turn the engine on. Like I said, that truck in the back has off-road tires, so it should be able to help itself up here. This time I'm going to take a right on the first road out of here. This will actually cut some of the trip off. We can bypass the factory altogether. And if you just follow this up a little ways, you can see this comes out on that back road, right up by the muddy spot. And now we're back to the road. The intersection we need to turn off on is just up ahead. So I have been looking forward to starting this region. I do like Wisconsin. It's not a real huge region, so actually it probably won't take us that long to complete, but it does have a lot of challenges, so it should be an interesting experience. We get a couple new trucks here and some upgrades that we can utilize on other vehicles, and it's kind of getting us prepared and set up for our experience in Amur, which will be the next region we do after this. We made it up to the gateway. We're going to pull the Lodestar up this road. You can see the drop-off point is just up ahead there. And we can drag it through the box, and now stage 1 is complete. Stage 2 requires us to repair it and refuel it, and it's going to need 330 repair points, which we don't have. So what I'm going to do is just pull this thing back out to the main road, and we'll drop it off by the gateway. Later on, when we come through there with the service trailer, we can repair it and get the task complete. So I'll just pull it over here to the left, and we'll leave it right there. Now I'll get turned around and prepared for the next episode when we discover the Grainwoods river map. I'm going to refuel my truck to make sure it's topped off to get ready for the next journey through that second map. This is where we're going to leave it today for this episode. Appreciate everybody coming out for the Wisconsin road trip series, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching, everybody.